समन्ता चक्रवालेषु अत्रा गच्छन्तु देवता सद्धम्मं मुनिराजस् सुनन्तु सद्धमुक्तधं धम्मसवनकालो अयं पदन्ता धम्मसवनकालो अयं पदन्ता धम्मसवनकालो अयं पदन्ता नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्दस्स एतं सन्तं एतं पनीतं यदिदं सब्ब संखार समतो सब्बोपदि पटिनिस्सग्गो तन्हक्कयो विरागो निरोधो निब्बानन्ति. Dear faithful devotee, Dhamma friend and Dhamma listeners, today we are going to continue as a continuation of the Dhamma series organized by the Vishwaniketan International Peace and Meditation Center under the title Mind Sky, Dhamma Breeze for a Bruised Mind. So we have been continuing with a series of Dhamma sermons based on particular themes which are relevant to our day-to-day life. So as another step of the same series, today in relation to a very important sutta preached by the Buddha, we are going to keep the theme of the Dhamma sermon as the resilience, the endurance or mental endurance. In Sinhala we call Daraganime Hakiya. So for today's Dhamma sermon, dear Dhamma friends, I have selected one Dhamma discourse from the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha, in the Salayatana Vakka, the book of the six sense bases, under the Vedana Samyutta, the collection of the feeling. The sutta's name is Salla Sutta. The English meaning goes the dart. Salla is a similar word. At times it is interpreted as the arrow or any sharp weapon which can harm some beings. So later on you will understand why this discourse is named as Salla Sutta. Therefore, dear Dhamma friends, let us start diving deep in this Dhamma discourse, particularly highlighting this theme, the resilience. So before we start the Dhamma discourse, dear Dhamma friend, I would like to tell you something about the resilience. In today's world, so many people are confronted with a lot of calamities, be them financial calamities, or be them relational calamities, be them ecological calamities, whatever you name it. So in the face of these calamities, all these difficult situations, people have found it difficult to withstand. They find it difficult to face and bear the grief, owing to a lot of reasons. So when they reach a threshold of bearing at one stage of their life, what would they do? Maybe they would kill themselves, they would commit suicide. or they would harm others in revenge. So all these negative things, all these calamities, they appear, they come to this world because we are so low, we are so poor in resilience. If we are in a position to withstand, if we are in a position to bear this up and live our life being unshapen by all these calamities, all these undesirable things, so our life would be a better one, a happy one. Therefore, focusing on that thing, dear Dharma friends, we are today listening, we are today discussing about resilience according to one sutta, Salla Sutta of the Buddha. According to this sutta, dear Dhamma friends, once in the advent of the Buddha, in one evening, the Buddha addressed the monks, the congregation of monks, in this way. He asked one rhetorical question from his this group of monks. He very simply asked by presenting one situation. He started the sutta like this: Dear monks, the uninstructed worldling, or we call Asutava Putujjano, who lives in this world, he would experience painful feelings, he would experience pleasant feelings, he would experience neither pleasant nor painful feelings. In other words, Buddha said, the Asutava Putujjano, uninstructed worldling, would experience Sukha Vedana, Dukkha Vedana, and Upekha Vedana. And also, Buddha pointed out, and Buddha told to this group of monks, dear monks, even the learned noble disciple, to which we call Sutava Arya Savako, he too would encounter Sukha Vedana, that is pleasant feelings, Dukkha Vedana, that is painful feelings, and neither pleasant nor painful feelings, that is Adukkama Sukha Vedana or Upekha Vedana. So, the meaning of this statement is, dear Dhamma friends, both uninstructed worldly and instructed noble disciple, both of them would equally experience this Sukha Vedana, Dukkha Vedana, and Adukkam Sukha Vedana. Now, the Buddha asked one rhetorical question from the monks. What is this question? The Buddha asked from the monks, Dear bhikkhus, what is the difference? What is the distinction? What is the disparage of between these uninstructed worldling and the learned noble disciple in relation to the experience of these three kinds of Vedana, three kinds of feelings? In simple terms, dear Dhamma friends, what Buddha asked was, when a person experience Sukha Vedana, Dukkha Vedana, and Adukkam Sukha Vedana, in the face of these three kinds of experiences, how would uninstructed worldling would respond to these things? And how would learned noble disciple would respond these three kinds of feelings? What is the difference? What is the distinction? So this is the basic question the Buddha asked. So this question is equally valid in today's society, dear Dhamma friends. There are two kinds of people in this society or in any society. Who are they? One group is the people who have not listened to the Buddha's Dhamma. Therefore, they don't know the Dhamma. They have not understood the Dhamma. Therefore, there's no room for them to live the Dhamma, live according to the Dhamma. Those people we call Asutava Pudujjano, the uninstructed worldling. And on the other hand, dear Dhamma friends, there are a group of people who have got the opportunity to listen to the Buddha's Dhamma. Therefore, they have a fairly good knowledge on the Buddha's Dhamma. They have understood the Dhamma to some extent. Therefore, they are in a position to practice Dhamma and they are living according to Dhamma. They are on the path to the Nibbana. Such people we call Sutava Arya Sadhu, learned noble disciples. In this sutta, according to this sutta, this noble learned disciple is at least a person who has attained the Sotapatti Magga. Nobody below that. So, hereafter, from this point onwards, this sutta teaches us the difference, the distinction between these two kind of people in their effort to respond or to survive these three kinds of feelings. Now, when Buddha asked this question, dear Dhamma friends, what did the monks say? They told the Buddha, dear Bhante, dear most venerable sir, most venerable master, our teaching, our Dhamma is based on you. Our Dhamma is based on the Tathagata, that is the Buddha. Our Dhamma is rooted in your teachings only. Therefore, Bhante, it would be very good if you yourself can explain the answer to this question to us. After hearing your answer, Venerable Master, then the bhikkhus, the monks would bear that answer in their minds and practice according to that. In simple terms, what they said was, it is really good that if Buddha can explain the answer to the bhikkhus, then bhikkhus will learn more Dhamma and they will learn how to face these calamities in their life. So, after hearing this response, dear Dhamma friends, Buddha said, okay, excellent. So, I will teach you the answer also. Then listen attentively, listen carefully. I will speak. Then the monks responded, very well, Bhante. We are listening. Please go ahead. Then from this time onwards, dear Dhamma friends, we have a very important, very practical exposition of Dhamma. Therefore, I invite you all to listen carefully. Pay your attention carefully. Don't get your mind distracted. So, in the very inception of this sutta, dear Dhamma friends, the Buddha says, dear monks, bhikkhus, when an uninstructed worldling or asutava pudujjano is being contacted with a painful experience, painful feeling, what would he do? He would lament, he would sorrow, he would cry loud, beating his breast from the hand, and he would become distraught at the end. At this juncture, dear bhikkhus, Buddha said, this uninstructed worldling experience two kinds of Vedana, two kinds of painful feelings. What are they? The painful mental feeling and the painful bodily feeling. Just like what? So Buddha gives an example here. So Buddha said to the monks, suppose monks, there is an archer who uses bow and arrow. He would shoot at a person with one arrow. And immediately after that, he would shoot the same person with another arrow. Now, the victim of this activity, that person who is shot by the arrow, now he's suffering the painful feeling which is generated by two arrows, first one and the second one. Just like that, bhikkhus, Buddha said, the uninstructed worldling who is contacted with a painful feeling, he experienced two kind of feelings. What are they? The painful bodily feeling and painful mental feeling. Okay, think about your lives also, dear Dhamma friends. When we are experiencing some difficult situation, be it a disease, be it a beating up or whatever, be it an accident or whatever, when we face them, we would always get a bodily pain. And because of this bodily pain, we are experiencing the mental pain also, thinking about our future. So this is unavoidable for people like us. So therefore, Buddha said the uninstructed worldling would always experience two kinds of feelings: the painful bodily feeling and painful mental feeling. And in the second step, Buddha says, dear bhikkhus, when this person is suffering from these two kinds of painful feelings, then what would he do? He would grow aversion, krodha, towards his painful feeling. We would always do that. If someone came to us to harm us, we would always feel anger towards them. So this person also, when he's experiencing these two kind of painful feeling, he would grow in aversion. So Buddha said, why he would grow in aversion? Because the underlying feeling to aversion, to which we call patigahanusaya, the dormant feeling of the aversion is still lying in our heart, still lying in our mind. From there only this anger comes. So in the second step, the uninstructed worldling would grow anger, would grow aversion towards this painful feeling. That's another negative effect on him. Then, dear Dhamma friends, Buddha says, then being suffering from these two kinds of painful feeling, then what would this uninstructed worldling do? Then he would always search for a solution. He would always search for a remedy for this difficult situation. So what would he seek at this juncture? He would seek pleasure, some sensual pleasure. He would start going after seeking sensual pleasure. Why? Because he doesn't know any other escape from this negative, painful feeling other than seeking for a pleasurable feeling. Without searching for a kamasukha or pleasurable feeling, he doesn't know any cure for this painful feeling. That is why. Then, when he searched for sensual pleasures, dear Dhamma friends, he would find some. But when he find these sensual pleasures, what would happen to him? He would get attached to these sensual pleasures. That is his nature. This attachment is called raga. He would grow in raga. He would grow in attachment to this sukha vedana, the sensual pleasure. Why? Because this underlying feeling of this raga, underlying feeling of raga, underlying mental state of raga is always lying dormant in his mind. From this root only, this raga attachment comes to him. Then, dear Dhamma friends, Buddha says, when he grows in attachment, raga in this pleasurable feeling, he has no understanding about five things in relation to these circumstances. What are they? The Samudaya, Atthangame, Aswade, Adinava, and Nissarana. Samudaya is origin. Atthangama is a passing away. Asada is a gratification. Adinava is a danger. And Nissarana is the escape. He has no good understanding, clear understanding about these five things in relation to these circumstances. Then it would lead to the experience of what, dear friends? It would lead to the experience of upekha vedana. Upekha vedana is neither pain nor pleasurable feelings. So when he has no understanding about the five things I just mentioned, he would grow in ignorance, which is avijja, because there lies the underlying feeling of avijja, to which we call avijjanusaya, in his mind, latent and dormant. So, in this way, Dhamma friends, this uninstructed worldling would always experience anger, attachment, and ignorance. In other words, he would grow in lobha or raga, dosa, and moha. Why? Because these three kinds of negative, unskillful thoughts have their roots in his mind. The root of aversion, the patigahanuse, the root of attachment, the raganuse, the root of ignorance, the avijjanuse. These three things are still remaining in this mind in dormant form. Whenever the circumstance appears, they would reactivate and come to the surface and bring sorrow to this uninstructed world. Therefore, dear Dhamma friends, Buddha said, when the uninstructed worldling is suffering from these three kinds of negative feelings, whenever he experiences Sukha Vedana, he will experience it attached to the fetters, attached to the kilesas, defilements. Sanyukto Vedeti. Those are the very Pali words Buddha uses. Sanyukto means attached to the kilesas. Whenever he experiences a painful feeling, he would experience that with an attached mind, not a detached mind. Whenever he experienced the neither painful nor pleasant feelings, the adukkhama sukha vedana, he will experience them attached, sangyukto vedeti, not detached, not visanyukto. So this is the situation in pertaining to the uninstructed worldling in relation to the Sukha Vedana, Dukkha Vedana, and Adukkhama Sukha Vedana. Buddha concludes this part of this discourse saying, therefore, dear bhikkhus, such uninstructed worldling is not devoid of birth, decay, and disease. He is not devoid of all these sorrow, lamentation, displeasure, despair, and grief. Finally, the distraught. Therefore, I exclaim that this is the person who have not found an escape from samsara. He's still tangled and entangled in this praxis of samsara. In other words, he is the person still suffering in this samsaric world. So this is the situation, dear Dhamma friends, pertaining to the uninstructed worldling. I think it is clear for you. Then Buddha turns towards the positive side of this experience. What is that? Then Buddha says, dear bhikkhus, when the instructed noble disciple, that is Sutava Arya Savako, when such a person is contacted with a negative feeling, what would he do? Unlike the Asutava Putujjano, he would not grieve. He would not lament. He would not become distraught. He would not beat his breast from his hand out of grief. He would not go out of mind owing to this situation. Why? Because he is so developed within in his mind. So this person, this instructed noble disciple, Buddha says, he feels only one kind of feeling in the face of this painful feeling. What is that? Only the painful bodily feeling, but not the painful mental feeling. Okay, think about this situation about in relation to our lives also, dear Dhamma friends. If you can develop a mind like him, whenever we are confronting with some uh, painful experience, we cannot avoid having painful physical feelings. That is unavoidable. But if we can avoid the painful mental feeling which is coming from that difficult situation, so it would be very easy for us to withstand that situation. It would definitely give you some resilience, some courage to withstand these difficult situations, isn't it? Yes, it is. Then Buddha says he only suffers a physical painful feeling, not a mental painful feeling. Like what? So Buddha gives a very good example similar to the previous one. Buddha says, suppose bhikkhus, there's one archer. He would shoot to a innocent person with one of his arrows, one arrow only. So the victim is now shot with one arrow, but this archer will not shoot another arrow immediately after the first one. Then what would happen? The victim would only suffer from the pain of one dart, one arrow, not a second arrow. Just like that, Buddha says, when instructed noble disciple is experiencing this difficult situation, painful situation, he has only one kind of painful feeling. What is that? Painful bodily feeling, but not the painful mental feeling. That mental feeling is missing there. So that is a very good advantage for a noble disciple, instructed noble disciple. In the second step, Buddha says, since this instructed noble disciple is experiencing only one kind of painful feeling, he would not grow in aversion towards that painful feeling. He would not grow in anger. He would not get conflicted. He would not conflict with this painful feeling. Since he has no aversion, he has not grown any aversion towards these painful mental feelings. Buddha says there would not be any underlying feeling of aversion to which we call patighanusaya in this learned noble disciple. Why? Since he has no anger towards that painful feeling, he would not have this patighanusaya, the underlying feeling of aversion in his mind. What does that mean? He should be a person who has uprooted the aversion, that is dosa, dvesha. So since he has no aversion towards that painful mental feeling, he would not seek for the kama sukha, the pleasurable experience, as a remedy to this aversion or this painful feeling. Why he would not seek pleasure as a remedy to this painful feeling, dear Dhamma friends? Because he knows that there is a solution, there is a way out from this painful feeling, except seeking for a pleasurable feeling, kama sukha. Without searching for a kama sukha, why he would not seek for Kama Sukha, that is pleasurable experience, because he knows that there is a remedy, there's a solution, there is a treatment for this painful feeling other than seeking for pleasures. Since he does not seek any pleasure, dear Dhamma friends, Kama Sukha, Buddha says, he has no underlying feeling of attachment to which we call raganusaya towards this painful or pleasurable feeling. Up to this extent, dear Dhamma friends, we just mentioned he has no raganusaya, he has no patighanusaya, he has no underlying feeling of aversion, he has no underlying feeling of this attachment, raga. So such a person, dear Dhamma friends, Buddha says, he would always understand the rising, the origin, the passing away, the gratification, the danger, and the escape of all these kinds of feelings. In other words, he would understand the samudaya, atthangama, adinava, asad, and nisarga of all these feelings with wisdom, with panya, he would understand. Since he has a fairly good understanding about these five kinds of aspects of all these painful or pleasurable feelings, dear Dhamma friends, when he would experience the adukkama sukha vedana, neither painful nor pleasurable feeling, he would not grow in ignorance. Avijja, ignorance would not afflict him. Why? Because he has no the underlying intention, underlying feeling of ignorance, to which we call avijjanusaya, latent in his mind. Therefore, he is devoid of patighanusaya, that is underlying feeling of aversion. He is devoid of raganusaya, underlying feeling of attachment. He is devoid of the underlying feeling of ignorance, to which we call avijjanusaya. So this raga, dosa, and moha is not suffering from. Therefore, Dhamma friends, Buddha says, whenever he experiences a painful feeling, he experiences that detached from kilesas. Visanyukto vedeti, those are the very words of the Buddha. And also Buddha mentions when he experiences a pleasurable feeling, he would experience that detached from the kilesas. Visanyukto vedeti. When he experienced the adukkama sukha vedana, upekha feeling, he would always experience it detached from the kilesas. Visanyukto vedeti. And by doing so, dear Dhamma friends, Buddha says, He is the one who is devoid of birth, decay, disease, and death. He's the one who is not suffering from this sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and distraught. Then Buddha says, I exclaim that. I explain to the world that he is the person who is got out of this samsaric world. He is the one who is now have found an escape from this recurrent birth, the samsaric life. In other words, Buddha says, he is the one who has eradicated the suffering. So now, dear Dhamma friends, it is very clear for us. Buddha says this is the difference. This is the distinction between the uninstructed worldling and the learned noble disciple. In relation to their experiencing of Sukha Vedana, Dukkha Vedana, and Adukkama Sukha Vedana. This is the difference. This is the distinction. But now, dear Dhamma friends, now we have to understand what is the relevance of this sutta to our topic, which is resilience? Now you got to know, now you have the knowledge how this Asutava Putujjano faced these three kinds of feelings. When he was uh, experiencing Dukkha Vedana, he grew in aversion. That means he grew in anger. Anger is not good for our day-to-day life. Getting angry with someone would lose your resilience. You would always go in conflict with them out of anger. Then that is a negative effect on resilience. That would not grow you in resilience. And in the second step, when he seek for pleasurable feelings, what did he do? He grew in attachment. So getting attached to things out of proportion, limitlessly, dear dumb friends, it is not a good thing in your life. It would bring always a lot of problems towards you. And that is also a negative thing. And also, when he has no understanding about this origin, passing away, gratification, danger, and escape of all these feelings, what happened to him? He grew in ignorance. Avijjanuse. Because of this avijjanuse, he grew in ignorance. Therefore, we can clearly understand in relation to the Asutava Putujjana, always this raga, dosa, and moha, attachment, aversion, and ignorance is circling around, giving so much problems to this uninstructed world. So the more you grow in attachment, anger, and ignorance, your the level of resilience become too low. You become so less resilient to these calamities. Then you would always have no peace in your mind, no calmness, no peacefulness in your mind. You will always get disturbed from this experience. So this is the disadvantage. So this is a problem with uninstructed worlding. That is why he would grow not resilient, but he would always react with some negative feelings. He would always clash against the world, experiencing so much unhappiness in mind and body. But when we consider the other side, positive side, dear Dhamma friends, we understood that from this sutta. When instructed noble disciple would not grow in anger in the face of painful feelings, what happened to him? He experienced only a bodily feeling only, but not a mental feeling. Think about a patient at a hospital, dear Dhamma friends. This patient is suffering from a very severe disease. But he is a person who would always grow in Dhamma. He has always grown in Dhamma. Since he knows this experiencing of disease is a part of this samsara, which is something unavoidable. Although he experienced a physical pain, he would not experience a mental pain. So it is a great calming effect towards him, isn't it? It really is. And this is the advantage for an instructed noble disciple. In the second step, when he has no aversion towards the painful feeling, what would he not do next? He would not go after seeking pleasurable things, that is Kama Sukha. Why? Because he knows that there is a remedy, there's a solution, there's a treatment for this painful feeling other than going after the pleasurable things. That is another advantage for him. Since he does not go after these seeking for these pleasurable things, what is the next good point for him? He would not get so much attached to things. This since he has no the raga, we know that how much problems we have experienced because of limitless attachments towards people, towards things, or towards situations. So less attachment is less problems. Buddha says, Nishchitancha chalitang, anishchitancha chalitang nati. The person who is attached to something, when that thing vibrates, the person also vibrates. But when that person is not attached physically or mentally to some situation, when that situation trembles, he would not tremble. So this advantage, this instructed noble disciple, he enjoys. And the third step, since he has an understanding about the origin, the passing away, the gratification, the danger, and the escape of all these kind of feelings, be them painful, pleasurable, or neither painful nor pleasurable, he would not grow ignorant. He would not grow less wise towards these situations because he has no the underlying tendency of ignorance, avijja, latent or dormant within him. So, because of this, dear Dhamma friends, he would always grow in wisdom. So, when this instructed noble disciple has less anger or no anger, when he has less attachment or no attachment, when he has less ignorance or no ignorance, he grows so resilient in the face of all the calamities that would appear in the society. So, from this, we understand that the lesser you grow in raga, desha, and moha, the lesser you grow in the attachment, the aversion, and the ignorance, the higher you grow in resilience. So, the lesser the defilements, the higher the resilience. Now, think about an arahant or a person above an arahant, like Buddha, Pacheka Buddha, and any other arahant being. Since they have eradicated all the defilements in full for the good, they might face some physical painful feelings, but they would never have a mental painful feeling forever until they are Nibbana, last Nibbana. So, therefore, Dhamma friends, although we cannot reach that climax, but when we take some effort to minimize our attachments, our anger, and our ignorance, at least to some extent, then to that extent, you can grow resilience. Therefore, dear Dhamma friends, the best way to grow in resilience is to go in the path which Buddha prescribed us to do. What is that? The path of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. First, the Sila, that is the verbal and bodily restraint. Then the Samadhi, that is the mental one-pointedness. Then when you are on the foundation of Sila and Samadhi, then you can always turn towards the Vipassana, that is developing your mind in relation to the three characteristics of existence to which we call Tilakkana, Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta. This is the way, there's no other way towards a higher resilient life, dear Dhamma friends. Therefore, we should always understand in this Sarana Sutta, the Buddha distinguished between one kind of people, who are they? The uninstructed worldly. The other kind of group of people is the learned noble disciple. And Buddha described very clearly how one group would respond to a painful feeling and a pleasurable feeling and the upekha vedana, and how the other group would respond to the same kind of feelings. And what is the difference? What is the disparity? And what is the distinction between those two kinds of people? Therefore, dear Dhamma friends, at the end of this Dhamma sermon, my advice to you is think about this sutta. Think about the difference. You should select to which group of people I should take some effort to be a member of. So then you would understand I should take some effort to become a Sutava Arya Savako. Then I would always grow in resilience. When you grow in resilience, you will find it very easy to face the painful situations that would confront in your life in the time to come. And when you grow in resilience, dear Dhamma friends, the people around you will always find it easy to uh, live with you. They will always easy to maintain relationships with you. That is also a social service. But we know that due to the lack of resilience in this society, dear Dhamma friends, people commit suicide. People do self-harm. People inflict harm towards others, and people would destroy the public properties, and people would destroy their own life and the lives of the others also. And at the end of the day, they would destroy the entire society little by little because they are so low in resilience. But after listening to this Dhamma, dear Dhamma friends, if you have a very strong mind that I would grow in resilience in the time to come, following these teachings of Buddha, it would be a great service, not only towards you, but also towards the entire society and the entire world and the entire universe. So with that, dear Dhamma friends, I would end this short Dhamma sermon under the theme, the resilience, the ability to withstand, the endurance, physical and mental endurance. I think you got some valuable in Dhamma information in relation to the teachings of the Buddha. I hope you understand them to some extent at least. And it is your duty to understand them and share this Dhamma and practice Dhamma and make this Dhamma part of your life. So with that, I would end this Dhamma sermon. Now think, dear Dhamma friends, all the merits that we have accrued by preaching this Dhamma and listening to this Dhamma. First of all, let us transfer all these merits to all the deities and all the devas, all the divine beings who would protect this universe, who would protect this Buddha Sasana, who would protect this Sri Lanka and all the other Buddhist countries and non-Buddhist countries, irrespective of their religion, race, or whatever the distinctions. Irrespective of all these variable things, we transfer all these merits to all the devas who would protect all of us. And may they rejoice in this Dhamma. May they learn this Dhamma. May they grow in Dhamma. And at the end of the day, they would attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And also think like this. The merits that we have accrued by listening to and preaching this Dhamma, let us transfer all these merits towards all the departed relatives who have now gone to the other world in our name. May they rejoice in Dhamma. If they are experiencing any difficulties in those worlds, may they overcome all these difficulties. May they be heedful towards Nibbana, and by the power of these merits, may they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And also, dear Dhamma friends, we, by the power of these merits, we wish the good health and longevity of our Dr. Charika Marasinghe, who is now organizing all these series of Dhamma, and may she grow in good health and longevity, overcome all the health issues being experienced by her at the moment, and may she grow in health and Dhamma and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this life itself. And also, we transfer all these merits to all the people who are living at the moment in this universe. All their secular activities, be them education, be their business or whatever the things they do for their survival, may they become successful in those events. And if they have any spiritual focus, may they have the power and energy to go to the end of the spiritual focus, and one fine day, may all of them attain Nibbana. So with that, dear Dhamma friends, I will end this Dhamma discourse with one preaching of the Buddha, May all of you be free from sorrow and pain. Sabbhityo vivajjantu sabba rogo vinassatu mate bhavatvantarayo sukhi dīghāyuko bhava bhavatu sabba mangalam rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhānubhāvena sabba dhammānubhāvena sabba sanghānubhāvena sada sutti bhavantu te අභිවාදන සීලිස්ස නිච්ඡං වද්ධා පචායිනෝ චත්තාරෝ ධම්මා වඩ්ඩಂತಿ ආයුවන්නෝ සුඛං බලං ආයුරාෝග්‍ය සම්පatti සග්ග සම්පatti මේවච අතෝ නිබ්බාන සම්පatti මිනාතේ සමිජ්ජතු. May all of you be free from sorrow and pain. තෙරුවන් සරණයි. යහපතක්ම වේවා.